Hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel. I hope the audio is okay. I tested it, but it seems super soft and I was struggling a little bit with it, so I don't know if it's... Oh, I'm still wearing the earphones that I was using to test the sound. So I don't know if it's said earphones' fault or if there is something wrong with the audio. I hope it's okay. I don't know if anyone is even here because I feel like I've been gone for forever and I'm so sorry about that. But before we get started with the read along, I kind of wanted to quickly talk about where I've been, why we're gonna be reading Modu slash silent reading today instead of ERHA, and kind of like what the plan is moving forward, shall we say. So I'm probably going to be clipping this and putting it up as a short as well, just to be safe. Hi. But yeah, basically I was in not the middle of ERHA Volume 8, but there was still a fair amount of Volume 8 of ERHA left. Hi! And I was struggling the last while before I stopped with that. I was struggling with something that I've never had to deal with before, which is being triggered by the content that is in ERHA, specifically the graphic depictions of gore. And I thought, maybe I can just get through it and be okay. And I realized I didn't want to risk it because I felt very stupid every single time we were in the middle of a read along, having to like take a moment live and try and pull myself back together. So basically, I am currently not at liberty to buy the final volume of Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish, which is the other of 3 novels that we're currently in the middle of doing a read along for. So, because I can't buy that at the moment, I just don't have the funds right now. I figured the best thing for me to do is to do Mordu right now, and then while I'm away on holiday, while I'm away on holiday, I will be uploading pre-filmed versions of the read-alongs for the rest of Volume 8, because then it'll allow me the chance to read it at my own pace, take breaks if I need to for whatever reason. As I said, I've never had to deal with being actually genuinely triggered by content, so I'm just trying to figure it out as I go along. So basically, that being said, we're going to be doing volume 4 of silent reading up until I leave for holiday. Then while I'm away on holiday, it will be the pre-filmed the pre-filmed read-alongs of ERHA Volume 8, the remaining thing of that. And then when I'm back in January and hopefully have some money, we will be going back to Beloved Pet Fish. Sorry, that's a lot. I wish I could be more concise about it, but yeah, I mean, the problem is I really love ERHA, but Meat Bun loves to see that her characters suffer. So yeah, I hopefully by the time we're back to for volume 9 of ERHA, I'll be able to be reading like normal again. Again, I have no idea how this works. I don't know how long it will be before it stops being an issue. Maybe me doing these pre-filmed versions will help me acclimatize with that again. So yeah, well, we're unfortunately kind of gonna have to play it by ear, but in the meantime, I'm very excited to be back with Moldu again. I have missed this so much. I have missed the characters. I want to know all the things that they couldn't show us in the show. So I hope you guys will enjoy it. And also, I haven't done it, I think, as far as I know, I haven't done it. No, I know for a fact, I haven't done it for this live stream, but in the next live stream, I will link Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the official English translations in the description. Currently, we are working with the fan translations. I am definitely going to be buying the official translations once they get released. But yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy these nonetheless. So that was a lot. Usually I try and keep the intros very short, but I guess we can just get going right now. And we will read for an hour. I'm gonna take a 10-minute break and then we'll be back for another hour. And depending on how I feel, we might try for 3. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel brave. So, okay. Oh wait, sorry. I haven't done this in a while. Let me just quickly get the chat to a place where I will be able to see it. Okay. And also, even though technically I am aware of how Moldu goes, if we haven't covered it in the live, then just for maybe people who aren't familiar with its sake, don't allow any spoilers. But yeah, would highly recommend the show as well, if you haven't watched it, and if you want to catch up on the read-alongs, that's an option as well. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm actually quite excited. Chapter 90, Reading Aloud. So for anyone who maybe wondered where we left off, we basically left off with Peisu, aka Feidu, meeting a certain someone's mom for the first time by flirting with her, which is just so classically Feidu, and I'm gonna have to get used to saying that name again instead of the one from the drama. So, since Feidu had started to be able to eat some ordinary food, his troublesome nature had immediately been revealed beyond doubt. He turned up his nose at the hospital's tasteless, watery fare. In fact, President Fei's original idea had been to move to a private hospital with fine scenery and hire a cook, bringing his crowd of beautiful assistants over to chat and making them run any necessary errands as he recovered. At any rate, it didn't matter to him whether he would be reimbursed for medical expenses. Unfortunately, Feidu's energy reserves had been void at the time, and it had been hard to speak. Before he'd finished stating this perfect plan, Lo Wei-jiao had already decided on an idea for him. Lo Wei-jiao said, "You don't like eating this? Alright, I'll cook for you and bring it over. So many problems. How come you're so hard to support?" Feidu could only tactfully express that Shishong was wounded himself. He didn't want to trouble an injured person. I'm sure that's the only reason. Having heard this, Lo Wen-jo nodded, then rejected his objection, having the final word. "No need for you to worry. It's settled." Okay, just a quick disclaimer. I might accidentally say Lo Wei-jiao a few times because my brain just kind of auto-completes it instead of reading what is on the page. But I'm gonna try and be good about it. When Lo Wen-jo's handiwork was admittedly pretty good, it certainly didn't rise to the level of being able to go on the celebrity cook-off program. He could only make plain home cooking, but somehow, for the sake of these plain home-cooked meals, Feidu obediently held his nose and stayed at the public hospital. When he thought of it afterwards, he couldn't understand it himself. The beginnings of love, sir. He could only ascribe it to the fact that he'd never eaten a free lunch in his life. I mean, this comes with a lot of emotional attachment, so I don't know if it's technically free, but at least it's well intentioned. For the criminal investigation team, the Zhao clan case had temporarily come to a close, but the economic investigation was far from reaching a conclusion, and the follow-up work was very complicated. Luo Zhao, Zhao had been very busy ever since returning to the city bureau, and today he'd had one meeting after another and really couldn't get away. He could only delegate Madame Wu Xiaoqing to go in his house to watch the stew pot, and Luo Yiguo and trouble her to go to the hospital. Before leaving, Luo Zhao had directed Taran to tell Feidu about it. He hadn't expected that as soon as Taran called, Feidu would greet him with the sentence, "Ge, you're on speaker. President Zhao is here and he wants to hear something of what's going on from you." Taran, with his compass needle-like attention, had heard this and immediately changed direction. Entering work mode and casting all matters about moms and delivering food far, far away. When he'd hung up the phone, there had been some doubt in Taran's mind. He thought he'd forgotten something. He turned it over in his mind, determined that he'd said everything he ought to have said, hadn't said anything he oughtn't have said, and thereupon had relaxed and concentrated his attention on writing a report. This had produced the current calamity. The dramatics. Also, I didn't realize originally that Tauta is actually named Taran in this, unless I'm misidentifying someone here. Looking at the living Feidu in front of her, there were a few seconds where Mu Xiaoqing really didn't think she had gone to the wrong room. Really did think she had gone to the wrong room. The last time she'd seen Feidu, he'd been brought out of the ICU. He'd been unconscious at the time, his face entirely bloodless, his ivy-bearing arm so thin you could see the bones. There had been hardly any skin showing, not covered in bandages. He'd looked like a piece of porcelain that would shatter at a touch. Despite being out cold, his brow had been furrowed, as if it had been enduring some agony that couldn't be covered up even by deep sleep. He'd looked as pitiful as could be. Mu Xiaoqing had later learned that he could have ducked behind his car and made it out with a scratch at most, and had only been injured like this for the sake of protecting her unfortunate son, and had thereupon, in connection with Feidu's delicate-featured face, imagined a story of an infatuated youth being carried off by a rotten scoundrel. Every time she'd come by his hospital room, her maternal love had nearly overflown. Stop, I love her already. I loved her in the show and I love her now. So afterwards, when Feidu had woken up and Luo Zhao had kept his parents from coming to visit with lies like, "I still haven't talked to him about going public, and we haven't gotten to the point of meeting the parents, so if you guys go over in too much ceremony, I'm worried he'd be stressed." Oh no. Mu Xiaoqing had actually believed it. Seeing him in the flesh now, she finally realized that her imagination had run too far, of course. Being half incapacitated didn't hold up Feidu's ability to flirt. He had a dark grey jacket on over his hospital gown, his hair was perfectly styled, and he was wearing a pair of rimless glasses. Before he'd spoken, there was already a part of a smile in his peach blossom eyes, reflecting from his cold glasses with a powerful and mysterious aura. He was simply rather demonic. Simply a different person from the poor child in the hospital bed. How come this wasn't at all like what Lo Wen-jaw had said? Oh, thank you. The inpatient department is a little confusing. Mu Xiaoqing looked him up and down, looked up at the number plate at the hospital room door, verified it was the right one 3 times over, then asked, "Do you know Lo Wen-jaw?" Oh my word. Feidu's original unassailable smile froze as he dimly sensed that something was off. Then he answered very cautiously, "Oh, he's my colleague. Excuse me, you are..." Mu Xiaoqing took the words, "he's my colleague," and chewed them over in her mind. According to her seasoned sense of taste, she couldn't sense any other meaning behind these words. Were all young people so calm and unblushing about their romances now? Stop. The thing is, I'm struggling to remember. I don't think they're officially in a relationship yet at this point in the novel. I think it's still very much like "I'm gonna make it happen" from Lo Wen-jaw's side, but I might be misremembering it because it's been a minute. Um. Hmm. Wu Xiaoqing gave an "oh" and nodded understandingly, thinking it was no wonder that brat Lo Wen-jaw, for once sending her to bring food today, had first exhorted her, telling her not to say this and not to say that, as if Feidu had been of an uncommon, easily embarrassed breed in the present age. After all this fuss, what Lo Wen-jaw had said outside the ICU that day had been entirely unilateral bluster. Oh goodness. Sorry, I just really want to make sure everything is still okay with audio. Okay. Mu Xiaoqing realized what was happening and was immediately overjoyed, knowing she had Lo Wen-jaw by the pigtails. She familiarly handed over the food and the flowers, sitting in the chair in front of the hospital bed, very warmly saying to Feidu, "Me? I'm his neighbor. He said he had something to do today that he couldn't get out of, and my husband just happens to be in the hospital for a few days, so he entrusted me with bringing you food while I was here. Your colleague brings you food every day? He's very good to you." Oh no. Feidu was extremely sensitive to others' expressions. More and more, he thought there was something off about this middle aged beauty, so he avoided the serious question and simply agreed, endorsing the fact that Lo Wen-jaw was very good to him, then changing the subject. "Thank you, but are you really already married?" Oh no, the flirting is still ongoing. Mu Xiaoqing knew perfectly well that this was wholly insincere flattery, but looking at Feidu's face, the flattery still put her entirely at her ease. Beaming, she said, "You're a very well-spoken child. My son is already as tall as an electricity pole." Oh, I live for the fact that she's having her own little joy in this moment. Feidu, dot dot dot. That description really sounded very robust. Madame Mu Xiaoqing's heart was as big as the Pacific Ocean, able to swallow Asia in one go. While she'd been temporarily astonished by the great change in Feidu, she recovered very quickly, hastily pulling back her imagination, which had wandered out of the solar system, adjusting to reality at the speed of light. After all, removing everything else, Feidu truly had saved her son under those circumstances, and Lo Wenjo's fluctuating emotions outside the ICU had been real. She sees the truth. I appreciate it. Oh goodness. So she very happily started asking after Feidu's family. Feidu didn't know whether today's good Chinese neighbors were all so immediately familiar. While he wasn't unable to hold his own, he was still entirely unprepared to meet this mother-in-law style cross-examination. Stop. Perfect description. He hadn't had a chance to rest his body and mind after his contest of wits with Zhao Huijin, and now he was meeting with these heavy losses. And most importantly, he felt he just made a blunder. Finally getting Mu Xiaoqing to get up and bid him farewell, Feidu hurriedly sent a message to Luo Zhao while her back was turned. Who came to deliver food? Then, as if nothing were the matter, he maintained a smile and went over in his wheelchair to open the door for Mu Xiaoqing. Where is your family member's hospital room? I'll take you to the nearest door. Mu Xiaoqing was happy after their chat and had already forgotten her initial nonsense. As soon as she heard the question, she casually answered, "The lead department." Feidu looked at her blankly. What? Mu Xiaoqing said, "No, that's wrong. There's no such thing as a leg department. What is it? Limb department? Lower limb department? Where do people normally go with athlete's foot?" Feidu, ... Her mouthful of nonsense absolutely had to come from genes very similar to Norman Jaws. Come this way with me. Without demur, Feidu took her towards the main doors. Before parting, he attempted to make a temperate and gentle impression to wipe away his earlier revolting behavior from the lady's mind. He persisted in going down in the elevator with Mu Xiaoqing, accompanying her to the inpatient department's main doors as if he were respectfully delivering the Empress Dowager. "You can just continue on ahead." All smiles, Mu Xiaoqing said, "Don't take me any further. Hey, how come you're suddenly all polite again after we've been talking?" Feidu gave her a very measured smile. As it should be. Just then, the phone on his knee vibrated. Feidu glanced down and saw that in his haste, Luo Wenjo had answered with 2 words. "My mom." Oh. In the biting cold wind of early winter, Feidu quietly broke out in sweat. "Goodbye, Auntie. Take care." Mu Xiaoqing sighed. I've been a young lady for less than half an hour, and now I've become an auntie." With great difficulty, Feidu maintained his unwavering expression. He said elegantly and bashfully, "It's that you really are too young. I made a mistake at first. I'm really sorry." Mu Xiaoqing only wanted to hear the first part of what he'd said and happily ignored the earnest apology. "I really loved talking to you. It's been years since I've received flowers from a handsome young man. I suppose even Luo Wenjo hasn't." The way she immediately clocked onto Feidu clocking onto her. These words seemed to have some rather profound significance. But before he could react, Mu Xiaoqing produced an even more ruthless sentence. She said, "I'll have to take this home and show it off to my old man." Then, holding the flower, Madame Mu Xiaoqing skipped lightly away, entirely carefree. Feidu, ... If he had been able to move a little more freely, he'd probably have knelt down before her. During a gap between his meetings, Luo Wenjo remembered Feidu's message just now and was very surprised that Taran hadn't explained things clearly to him. He was a little worried Mu Xiaoqing hadn't been able to control her mouth and had talked some nonsense, so he called back. What's the matter? In a somewhat strange voice, Feidu said, Nothing. I love you, Shishong. Okay, obviously I was misremembering because he would not casually confess that if they were not in mutual understanding of each other's feelings. Okay, sorry, I'm just acclimatizing to that very casual I love you bomb that Feidu just dropped. Okay. Lu Wenzhou knew perfectly well that the words I love you coming out of Feidu's mouth were about the same as have you eaten, but he still accidentally bumped into a drinking fountain in the hall. Then, that evening, he received a frank and ardent bouquet of roses. The sweet fragrance assaulting his nose made Lu Wenzhou think for a moment that Feidu had done something to let him down. But recalling Feidu's condition, even if he'd wanted to do something, it would have been a case of the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I don't know why, but that is one of my favorite idioms that I have come across since reading Danmei, because it just says so much. I don't even know if it's from reading Danmei, it might have just been from some of the different Chinese shows that I've watched, but I feel like I've definitely come across that before, and it's so good. So he calmed down at once and cheerfully took the flowers home and put them in his study. And when Lo Yiguo came to investigate, he ruthlessly locked it out, whistling happily. Madame Wu Xiaoqing now had unspeakable handles on both of them, but their daily peaceful coexistence was each harbored. Uh, sorry, Coexistence as each harbored his own intentions was now a good deal more harmonious than before. Finally, after another month and more, during the first snow of midwinter, Lo Wenzhou was no longer limping, and Feidu had recovered enough to leave the hospital. The heating inside the car was too strong. Feidu accidentally dozed off. When Lo Wenzhou poked him awake, he opened his eyes and looked around, finding that the surroundings weren't at all familiar. It's 5 minutes to my house, Lo Wenzhou said. Wake up, or you'll get chilled and catch a cold. Feidu quietly repeated, Your house? Lo Wenzhou, remaining calm, kept his attention fixed on the road ahead and forced out a matter-of-fact expression. Right, I've prepared all the usual daily necessities. I'll drop you off and you can see what's missing and make a list for me. Feidu perhaps got the wrong idea. He silently accepted this arrangement, at the same time subconsciously licking his lips. Okay, I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for anything, especially not right now. Feidu had been to Lo Wenzhou's house twice. It was about 100 meters square, with an additional complementary basement. It was a little too big for a bachelor, though a cat could gobble around inside to its heart's content. Sorry, gamble? Yeah, sorry, gamble. I don't know why my brain didn't want to read that. They went inside. The heating was turned up warm, and the scent of cooking meat floated out from the kitchen to greet them, a smell of home uncompromisingly wrapped around the people who'd come in from the frozen, snowy day as if it could melt them. Because Comrade Lo Yiguo's revolutionary integrity was insufficient to win others' trust, and there was chicken cooking in the kitchen, Lo Wenjiao had locked the cat in the bathroom before leaving. Lo Yiguo was beside itself with rage over this arrangement. Hearing the front door, it scratched the door even more furiously, yowling. As soon as the door opened, it threw itself forward to scratch up its litter box attendant's face. I keep forgetting that that's how, from Lo Yiguo's perspective, Lo Wenjiao was designated. But before it could put this plan into practice, Lo Yiguo smelled the strangest scent, came to a halt 2 meters from Feidu's feet, opened its eyes into circles, then, terror-stricken, fled back to its provisional jail, noiselessly hiding behind the door. Oh, poor Feidu. Feidu was like a household guardian. As soon as he came, there was no need to guard against a cat jumping on the dining table. But when Zhao, for once, ate a meal without having to keep his eyes and ears peeled, it was so tranquil he was nearly moved. He was even more moved by the fact that Feidu actually didn't get up to any tricks. Not only did he not raise any objections to Luo Wenjiao deciding on his own initiative to bring him home, his temper was also very good. No matter what you said to him, he would always answer, fine. And he was temporarily keeping down his troublesome nature, not being picky at all about the daily necessities Luo Wenjiao had prepared. Of course, at nightfall, Luo Wenjiao found out that he had been moved too soon. Guys, I'm not ready for any of this. And that's the end of the chapter. Okay, let me just check in, see if everything is still going. I really hope the internet is not giving any issues. Okay. Oh goodness, I'm gonna butcher this surname. We're gonna try. Chapter 91, Bervinsky 1. I hope I said that right. Luo Wenjiao himself ordinarily lived in the guest room because the guest room had its own bathroom where because the guest room and its bathroom were the closest to the front door. So if he slept late in the morning, he could discard the whole mission of dusting cat hair off his face, getting dressed, and washing up within 2 minutes. Discharge. Why am I struggling to read? So, when using the master bedroom as a guest room, he carried in fresh bedding to lay out for Feidu. Feidu evidently got the wrong impression. Weirdly makes sense. Luo Wenjiao hadn't yet straightened up when a familiar Mu Xiang sense came up from behind him. Then he was hugged from behind, one very badly behaved hand hooking around his waist, the other hand lightly brushing past his neck and pressing his lips. Then there was breath at his ear. I feel like I'm gonna need a pillow and I don't have anyone near me. Luo Wenjiao's ear buzzed. His body didn't wait for instructions. Without authorization, it was already half on fire. He grabbed Feidu's wrist, thinking his own palm was so hot it was humiliating. Luo Wenjiao said, "Don't mess around." Feidu had discovered long ago that Luo Wenjiao couldn't resist Mu Xiang, especially when there was only a tail end left of it. So before leaving the hospital, he'd especially had his assistant bring over a bottle. Now, he turned a deaf ear on Luo Wenjiao's weak resistance, obligingly letting him grab his wrist, licking the back of his neck. Shishong, you're pretending to be a saint. Luo Wenjiao shivered. Hi. Where was I? Oh, Luo Wenjiao shivered. He was caught off guard when Feidu pushed the backs of his knees, pushing him onto the quilt he just spread out. Oh my word, okay. Feidu's freshly washed hair was wet, water droplets gathering at the ends, glittering in the dim light of the bedside lamp. Dazzling. A droplet suddenly took shape and dripped down. Lowendraw's throat rolled with it. Oh, I hope I also can't wait. And the fact that we got the cover for volume 2 and it's beautiful as well. I'm very tempted to redo all the thumbnails for the previous volume so that they match. Anyway, guys, I'm not ready. Okay. Feidu, with a smile that wasn't quite a smile, added, "Though I like your type of pretend saint that shows off the wolf and shows the wolf into the house, you must taste very good." Get off. Like a tiny soft-shelled turtle, Lo and Joe was internally hot, unbothered, but still reached out a hand to push him. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Just out of the hospital and you're courting death?" Feidu had seen the enemy's will to resist was very half-hearted. He let him push, not dodging away. As expected, Lo and Joe's strength was no greater than Lo Yiguo's. He only gave a light shove. Feidu didn't retreat, so Lo and Joe's hand on his chest changed its meaning. It seemed he wasn't refusing, but taking advantage. That's what you're telling yourself. Lo and Joe felt Feidu's heartbeat. He'd heard that it had stopped once, so when Feidu had just gotten out of the ICU, he'd been unable to resist listening to Feidu's heart, thinking that he'd have done anything to make that weak and sluggish heartbeat liven up again. Now that it had livened up, Lo and Joe was somewhat regretful, wanting to eat his words from back then. "Oh, you're only saying that because you're secure in the knowledge that he's fine." As he was lost in thought, Feidu came close. All the muscles in Lowendraw's body suddenly tensed, and his breath caught. Feidu first faintly touched the corners of his lips. Then, with a trace of huskiness, he said, like a sigh, "If I'm courting death, dying in a bed with you would be a fine ending." If I could scream, I would. Oh my goodness. Okay. Lowendraw really didn't want to hear the word dying. His countenance instantly changed. "Stop talking." The poor rebuke, "Stop talking nonsense," hadn't made it out when Feidu sealed his mouth. This time, there was a faint taste of lemon between lips and teeth, the new toothpaste he'd bought. Feidu demonstrated for him on the spot the gift of gab that could tie a cherry stem into a knot, stirring Lowendraw, who'd firmly believed himself to be free of distracting thoughts, into a pot of porridge, boiling away his last bit of reason. By the time Lowendraw came around, he was already helplessly cursing back. He subconsciously pressed Feidu's back, his hands escaping the control of his brain, starting to grope around on Feidu's body under the direction of a different organ, until he accidentally touched the back of Feidu's shoulder. Being touched in an injured place obviously made Feidu give a start of pain, but he really was something. For the sake of certain unspeakable aims, he bore up without making a sound. But Lowendraw's head cleared instantly. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly pulled a trick, unexpectedly turning over, pressing Feidu onto the fluffy quilt with incomparable swiftness. Before Fedu could react, there was a chill at his wrist, and he heard a click. This man did not just handcuff him. I almost don't want to confirm. His left hand had been cuffed to the head of the bed. This is gonna be interesting because, like, it's. I don't know, it's been so long. And I don't know, like it's always a thing for me to see how writers portray these intimate moments with the characters because it says a lot to me about the writers' understanding of their characters. But this is not a surprise. And if we find out that Fedu is kinda here for it, I would also not be surprised. Like, this feels very fitting to them. Calming his wildly racing heartbeats, Lowenjo, his face stern, twisted his neck, which had become stiff as stone, settled down. Fedu tilted his head and shook his wrist. The handcuffs made a crisp sound. He laughed carelessly. Are you planning to be this intense right at the start? He definitely likes it. I will not be told otherwise. The taste of Pretend Saint really could be called superb. It lived up to the hype. Lowenjo rolled his eyes at him, irritably grabbing a handful of his own messy hair. He stood and shook out the quilt, pulling it out from under Fedu, quickly and efficiently wrapping him up in a big cocoon. Then he tapped Fedu's head. Fedu, ... No, this didn't seem to be the right direction. When he'd finished tapping, Lowenjo impartially and incorruptibly smacked him a few times through the quilt. Sleep. Oh my word, I didn't think I could love them any more than I already do. President Faye absolutely hadn't expected this officer law who'd said he wanted to frame a new drawing of himself to really be a true saint. As if he'd unexpectedly met one of the country's guardian beasts in the middle of a downtown street. He stared blankly in shock for a while, pulling in disbelief at the handcuff locked on the head of the bed. Lowenjo, are you going to make me sleep like this? Of course that wasn't what Lowenjo was thinking. After a moment, he came back in carrying a blow dryer. He turned it up to its highest setting, aiming it at President Faye's sexily dripping hair and blowing noisily, using exactly the same movements as when he dried Loigo's fur after giving it a bath. The amount of cat analogies that fit with Fedu is just astounding, and the appreciation, like, for the fact that they carried it over into the show in so many ways. But also, can confirm, Fedu aka Peisu with the like I just showered look, deadly. I do not blame Lowenjo at all. Hearing the familiar sound, Loigo looked in through the crack at the door, discovering that the litter box attendant was carrying out the infeline. That is not the way to pronounce that, but I can't figure out how to do it. Infeline, that doesn't feel right, but anyway, abuse against another person, and was instantly worried, afraid that it would be in turn next. It hardly slipped noiselessly away on the pads of its paws. long hair in his face, unable to speak without eating hair, President Fei could only close his mouth. Owen Jaw did the task very proficiently. In less than 5 minutes, he'd simply and conveniently finished dealing with President Fei's precious head. He not very gently grabbed at it, then was about to turn off the bedside lamp. That's better. Go to sleep. Feidu deftly reached out his remaining free hand and pulled Luo Zhao back. Shishong, I was wrong. Let me go. I guarantee I won't mess around. Luo Zhao looked at him expressionlessly. The TV in the living room was just replaying a skit. A tiny line of dialogue floated in through the crack in the door. You 1,000-year-old fox, what strange game are you playing with me? Feidu, dot dot dot. Luo Zhao, dot dot dot. In the strange situation, against this strange backdrop, the two of them looked at each other helplessly for a moment, then finally found the humor in the scene and simultaneously began to laugh. Feidu, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, leaned back against the pillow. The pillow was very soft, with a slightly sweet scent. Perhaps Luo had sprinkled some sleep aid onto it, or perhaps Feidu had been tired out by the tossing around. As soon as he touched the pillow, his eyes began to droop. He raised his free hand against the gentle light of the bedside lamp, half screening his eyes, murkily saying, Then, what did you bring me home for? Because he wants you to move in, but he doesn't want to say it yet. Luo sat silently at the side of the bed for a while. I want to take care of you. Can't I? I'm dead. I love this so much. I forgot that to be fair, I didn't know at the time that we were leaving off on such a wonderful moment in the novel. Okay. Feidu paused, his eyes about to close, silently opened wide again. Haven't you been taking care of me these last couple of months? Wen Zhao turned, propping his elbow on his knees and putting his face in his hands, looking at him. Do you think I was taking care of you because you got in the way of a bomb for me? Before Feidu could answer, Wen Zhao slapped him through the quilt. You bastard. Feidu moved slightly, making the handcuff at the head of the bed rattle. With his head of messy hair blow-dried fluffy and soft by Luo Zhao, he looked helplessly at him, not knowing which of them was the bastard. Luo Zhao suddenly remembered something and asked, When we were going to grab Zheng Kaifeng, what was the personal question you wanted to ask me in the car? Feidu thought about it a while, lowering his hand, firmly blocking his eyes. I forgot it at the hospital. How about I think of another one? For example, what position do you like? They are gonna beat the death of me, I swear. That wasn't what you wanted to ask them, Luo Zhao said positively. Then, when Feidu thought he was going to avoid the question, Luo Zhao unexpectedly answered in earnest. He said, I like it when you can see each other's faces. This sort of question you'd know the answer to at once if you tried. I'm struggling to understand that sentence. This sort of question you'd know the answer to at once if you tried. I don't know if it's supposed to say if you tried, it doesn't have any value. I don't know. President Fei, are you this witless when you're conducting business? How come your company hasn't shut down yet? I'll give you another chance to make a deal, alright? This is very much reminding me of the questions that we had in the show, and I don't know if we're getting there or if they substituted it and just made very good choices with the substitute questions, because I remember there being a lot of tension in that scene as well. With Captain Law forcing a deal, Fei Du didn't agree or disagree. He was silent for a while under the soft bedside light. Then he said, Shi Wen Chao, the one who kidnapped and murdered those children. The place where he disposed of the bodies belonged to a project company under the banner of the Guangyao Fund. Because some of the formalities couldn't be completed, the project was constantly put off, and that unused piece of land became a safe burial ground. You already know that. I'll tell you something you don't know. The project plan for the project came into Fei Chengye's hands for him to invest capital in. Fei Chengye didn't give the reason that there Fei Chengye didn't, giving the reason that there was no mature profit model. That kind of feels like a not subtext, euphemism, considering what we know now. Fei Chengye was Fei Du's father and the founder of their conglomerates. No mature profit model didn't sound at all unusual, but Luo Wenzhou could hear something horrifying in Fei Du's voice. He subconsciously sat up straighter. Your dad had a connection to the Guangyao Fund. They used to be very close cooperative partners. Fei Du held up 2 fingers, indicating that this was his second question. I investigated after I took over the company. Before, he contributed a great deal of money to a public welfare fund under Guangyao's banner. In its early stages, the company's management was irregular, and the accounts were very hard to look into. But judging from a few remaining materials, the Guangyao Fund is long established, and almost none of the projects they collaborated on ever made any money. The corner of Luo Wenzhou's eyes twitched. I understand Fei Chengye. He was very greedy, astute, and unfeeling, Fei Du said slowly, each word seeming to stick in his throat, coming out very heavily. There were some projects you could tell from looking at the name were ridiculous investments. I don't believe he'd been fooled time and time again. Luo Wenzhou pondered this silently for a moment. Is there anything else? No, Fei Du shrugged. Do you think it was easy for a young master to get into the convoluted conglomerate he had left behind? It took me nearly 2 years just to get access to the company's key encrypted documents, both openly and in secret, getting rid of a whole stumbling block of reinforcement. Fei Du swallowed back the last sentence and feigning high spirits, leaned back against the head of the bed, half sitting up. Now it's my turn to ask you. Do you? Luo Wenzhou reached out to block his lips. Do you want to think about it? Don't waste another opportunity. If you really can't remember, I can repeat everything we said in the car that day. Fei Du was silent for a long time, his originally frivolous-seeming peach blossom eyes growing calm. After a while, he finally said, This is my first time meeting such an energetic competitor in answering questions. Not letting himself off, Luo Wenzhou stared at Fei Du's eyes. He'd felt that when Fei Du had made him trade personal business for information, it hadn't been entirely a joke. He really had wanted to ask something then, but he'd quickly regretted it and hadn't wanted to say it. Zheng Kaifeng's truck had appeared then, giving him a chance to extricate himself. If Fei Du had only wanted to make a somewhat obscene joke, he could easily have said it while they followed. Matters hadn't reached the stage where there was no time to say a sentence. The corner of Fedu's mouth tensed involuntarily. Lowenjaw waited for a moment, his expression somewhat dismal and his voice slow. He said, "All right, or you can tell me tomorrow." "I wanted to ask." Fedu started hastily, then, partway through, he smiled. "It's a silly question. If you didn't insist on asking, I'd have forgotten. Didn't you say then that you weren't the sort of scum who'd confess his feelings to a person and then turn around and suspect him? So I wanted to ask, when did you confess your feelings? And why don't I know about it?" "You don't know?" Lowenjaw raised his eyebrows. "I don't think I was very subtle. You're such an expert at picking out meanings from other people's punctuation marks. How could you say you don't know? Do you really not understand, or are you playing dumb?" "Fedu." Lowenjaw sighed, reaching out to stroke Fedu's chin. "You're going to say you don't understand why my mom went to the hospital to bring you food either? Isn't that right?" "Fedu, dot dot dot." Lowenjaw held his chin, making him look up. "Also, you came here today, planning to sleep with me. You never meant to stay for long, right?" The unpacking that is happening right now of Fedu's psyche. Fedu was temporarily speechless. He was clearly the one who'd made provoking sexual advances first, the one who'd gone out of bounds in his attempts. But when he really was pulled in, he was at a loss and instinctively wanted to take to his heels. But while his instincts wanted to run, in his heart he didn't really want to run. The two impulses collided, throwing him into a dilemma. He could only stay where he was, stiff with panic. "I'm not okay." Lowenjaw laughed, cutting off his other road. He said, "Dream on." Then he came over, carrying a quilt, threw it down next to Fedu, put some cotton around Fedu's handcuff, and turned off the bedside lamp. "If you want to get up to the bathroom at night, wake me up so I can uncuff you. Sleep." Oh my word, why is this so insane? I love them so much. Okay, we've done 2 chapters. So I'm quickly gonna take my 10-minute break and then we'll be back for at least another hour, maybe two, because I'm really just enjoying being back in this world. And suffice to say, it is quite a bit lighter, at least at the moment, than where we left off with ERHA. So yeah, I'll see you guys then. Okay, I think we're back. The audio seems very, very quiet, but then I'm scared if I use the other audio, then um, it will be overwhelmingly loud. So let me know how this sounds, but I feel like maybe I should try the other audio. The other audio is just super sensitive, so I might accidentally murder your eardrums, and I don't want to do that. How is this? Is this at all better than the previous audio? I hope so. Mm. Okay, I might regret this, but we're just gonna go with this audio and hope for the best. If it's an issue, please someone just shout in the chat. I would really appreciate it. But yeah, we left off at the end of chapter 91. Sorry. Actually, I could theoretically quickly check the audio with this. Let's just see. Hopefully, you guys won't hear the feedback of it. Just see. Oh no, this is terrible. We will deal with the softer audio and go back to the audio that we had. Noise. Sorry, interrupting myself in the middle of that. Okay, I hope this audio is the better audio. And let's get back to it. Okay, chapter 92, Verhovensky 2. Staying at the hospital for over 2 months, Fedu had more or less made up a whole lifetime of lost sleep. He'd really slept rather too much. Today he'd scraped up some sleepiness because of the soft pillow, but when he'd gone through a session of mental and emotional but then he'd gone through a session of mental and emotional turmoil. Once he lay down, it was somewhat hard to believe to once he lay down, it was somewhat hard to calm his state of mind, especially with his partner in turmoil sleeping very innocently next to him. He could only arrange himself into a contemplatively comfortable position and close his eyes. Thoughts turning through his mind like a revolving horse lantern. He thought of what he was pursuing, thought of what his next step should be, thought of what he'd revealed to Lorwinjaw and what he was still concealing, and so on. The sudden appearing bomb on Zheng Kaifeng's truck had not only made Feidu take a turn at the border between life and death, it had also upset his plans quite a bit. For example, because of his hospital stay, the picture album project had temporarily changed to a different contact person. The new contact person had evidently only accepted the assignment for course credits, not going to the city bureau at all aside from going over to go through the procedures to get materials. Also, because of the Jewel family case, the city bureau was frantically busy during the period, so all the work of setting up the picture album was basically at a standstill. For another example, with the Jaw clan's case coming out, those people had without warning shown their fox's tail in public view. Though in the end they'd used a very crude method to murder in silence, managing to cover things up and make the city bureau pin together some evidence to wind up the case. Those who were paying attention would all have their own suspicions and guesses. Of course, from Feidu's point of view, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but now that the public authorities had been alerted, it meant that the degree of difficulty of his original plan to dispose of those people without anyone being the wiser had become much, much higher. And then, and then there was Law Windjaw. Yes, leaving aside his numerous and complicated middle and long term plans for the moment, there was still an extremely urgent, trivial matter in front of him, forcing Feidu to make a difficult choice. Today he'd bewilderingly ended up staying at Law Windjaw's house. What should he do tomorrow? Should he stay on here in a muddle or make a quick cut, take his leave and go? Feidu was by nature capable of living alone, and later he'd learned how to fool around. But no one had ever taught him what a long-term stable relationship looked like. That is so sad, but that makes so much sense for his life experience. Thinking of all the inconveniences involved and the huge uncertainty in the future, Feidu felt an inexplicable restlessness and anxiety. He simply couldn't understand why he didn't pry open the handcuff, jump barefoot out the window, and run away. But fortunately, while Feidu was being tormented by 1,000 unbearable thoughts, his wounded shoulder and chest suddenly flared up, the pain interrupting his numerous and disorderly thoughts. For a moment, Feidu couldn't quite catch his breath. He quietly pulled aside the quilts covering him a little, then habitually rolled over and lay flat, drawing his breathing out long and slow, using the pain as a sleep aid. That sounds very healthy and like something a normal, adjusted person would do. Not only did Feidu not make a sound, he was secretly relieved. He had a warm love for. What? He had a warm love for indisposition. For him, bodily pain was sometimes like a strong sedative. While he was focused on resisting pain, he could often get rid of the distracting thoughts. His desire for control attaining the greatest release. It was a very addictive business. That sounds very concerning, not gonna lie. In the midst of this half-stifling ache, Feidu finally ceased the torment he'd subjected himself to half the night. His body, covered in cold sweat, gradually relaxed, and he began to feel slightly sleepy. Unfortunately, when he was just about to vanquish insomnia, Law and Jaw made him fail at the last minute. This bit of goods, perhaps afraid he wasn't sleeping well, got out of bed, thinking he was being quiet, and opened Feidu's handcuff. The metal clicked, uncommonly ear-splitting in the silence, stabbing like a needle through the sleepiness Feidu had with difficulty gathered up. Feidu. ... He really was too grateful for Luo Shishong's thoughtfulness. Luo Zhao also seemed to be upset by his own somewhat loud movements. He held his breath in the dark, cautiously watching Feidu's movements. Feidu, keeping his eyes closed, pretended to be asleep, but the more he pretended to sleep, the more his nerves acted up. They were ready to jump up and do the tango. Oh no. After a while, Lo and Joel finally finished watching and gingerly got back in bed. The mattress shook slightly. At last he'd calmed down. Fedu breathed a sigh of relief. He relaxed his tense limbs, ramblingly thinking that sleeping in the same bed had its bad points. It was all right when you could close your eyes and sleep after some exercise, but if you were having a touch of insomnia, the person next to you breathing and turning over was disturbing, especially someone like Lowen Jaw. With his presence, Lowen Jaw of the powerful Lowen Jaw of the powerful presence rustled once again, annoyingly turning over and showing signs of getting up. At last, Fedu truly had a slight collapse, wishing to take a hammer and knock out Lowen Jaw and then himself. Lowen Jaw had absolutely no idea that he was disturbing his pure dreams. He propped both hands on the mattress, half rose, and looked over to study Fedu's sleeping countenance. By the faint light of night, he looked for a while. Then he really couldn't help himself. He leaned close and kissed Fedu lightly, then gently pulled him into his arms. He could only do these things by stealth while Fedu was sleeping, or else the Joker would probably climb all over him. Oh, if only you knew, sir, if only you knew. I think Fedu might have a heart attack at this. Fedu. ... Like a corpse, he let Lowen Jaw move him around. The breathing he thought was bothersome was now right at the base of his ear, and the rising and falling chest was pressed closely to his back. One of the quilts had been set aside unused. It was a particularly crowded position. Fedu helplessly thought, forget it. The word forget it seemed to be a magic spell. The results were instant. As soon as he thought them, all the bothersome details around him settled, and Fedu actually slept through the night. However, while his sleep had been calm, he was scared awake. At 6 in the morning, Loigo woke punctually from its first sleep, feeling that something was amiss. Thereupon, Master Cat gave a big stretch, teeth bared and claws extended. Then, shaking its head and waving its tail, it trembled, resettling all of its bristling fur, and went to patrol its fiefdom. Fiefdom? I think it's fiefdom. I think I might have mispronounced it. In the end, squeezing through the crack in the door into the master bedroom, which was 2 degrees higher than everywhere else. Loigo stretched itself out, standing on its hind legs and grabbing the edge of the bed, curiously smelling left and right. Then, gathering up its courage, it meowed and leapt vigorously onto the bed, lowering its head to sniff Fedu's hand, lying outside the covers. Halfway between sleeping and waking, Fedu felt a ball of fur rub against his hand and subconsciously reached out to touch it, touching a soft and warm little living creature. First, he froze. Then he moved entirely from sleepiness to stress. Fedu sat up at once, his pupils instantly contracting, all the blood in his body pushing out of his limbs by his sharply rising blood pressure. His hands and feet went numb, and his neck seemed to be squeezed by an imaginary metal ring, making his breath stop involuntarily. This was pretty bad to experience via the show, and I am apprehensive about how it's gonna be with the reading. Still badly shaken, the human... Oh wait, sorry, I missed a paragraph. Loigo had been seriously identifying the strange smell. It was startled into a jump by Fedu's sudden corpse-like rise, all the fur on its body bristling, back leg missing a step on the end of the bed, sending it tumbling down. Still badly shaken, the human and cat stared at each other, helpless for a moment, finally disturbing the master of the house. Lo and Joe blearily took Feidu into his arms, gently slapping his waist. Don't mess around, it's still dark out. The domesticity, I cannot. And the fact that, like, Lo and Joe is not at all bothered about it, like, he's just acting like this is totally normal and an established thing that they do. Feidu only then pulled himself together, slowly letting out a breath caught in his throat, fully waking up. Lo Yigo had ducked under the little rattan chair by the bedside, showing only its head, gingerly resting on its front paws. Its two sharp ears lay flat, staring at him like a rabbit. Feidu returned its gaze for a moment, then slowly moved Luo Wenjiao's arms aside, noiselessly getting out of bed and left the bedroom. Luo Yigo stared at his back in alarm. Suspecting that the litter-scooping idiot had been killed by the bad guy, it hurriedly jumped onto the bed to investigate. It circled Luo Wenjiao twice, finding to its gratification that the litter box attendant was still breathing. I love you, Luo Yigo. I don't think I have a right to love it as much as I do. It then relaxed and stepped onto him without any mercy, ran out the bedroom, and continued to scout out the enemy situation. But the enemy hadn't stormed and captured its scratching post, nor had he looted its bed. He was only staring vacantly at the floor-to-ceiling window of the balcony. Luo Yigo was still afraid of him and wavered in its place, not daring to go over, filled with misgiving and beginning to involuntarily catch its own tail. By the time it caught itself, it found that Feidu had been staring at it for a while. Luo Yigo hardly put on the brakes, opening its large eyes wide and stiffening into a museum exhibit. Feidu still remembered what this cat had looked like when it had been small. Back then, it had still been a tottering kitten with its tail stuck up, with down-like chicks on its head. Looking like its head was too big for its body, its expression moronically confused. That's such a rude description of this poor cat. On Taran's account, he'd reluctantly brought the little cat back to the apartment in the city. Aside from giving it food and water every day, he'd basically turned a blind eye to the cat. The kitten had been naturally clingy. Despite being ignored over and over, it still wouldn't let him off coming over to cuddle. If he didn't pay attention to it, it would cry out, making so much noise Feidu couldn't stand it. One day, the kitten reached out a paw towards him, its claws hooking onto his pant leg. Then it flopped onto the ground, shamelessly demanding attention. Feidu's patience finally ran out. As he frowned, staring coldly at the cat, deliberating who he should give it to, Fei Chungyue suddenly arrived. And I forgot to freaking get a pillow in the break. Okay. The moment he heard the sound of the keys, Feidu grabbed the cat hanging off his pant leg, breaking off the kitten's claws. The kitten's weak cry hadn't yet come out when its voice was cut off by the boy squeezing its neck. Then it was roughly thrown into a drawer. When the drawer had just been closed, the man opened the door and came in. Feidu, a book in his hands, walked calmly out of the study as if he'd just been disturbed by the sound of the door opening. Fei Chungyue still found the cat food and litter box in the apartment. Fortunately, he just cleaned the litter box and hadn't yet poured out the cat food. Feidu asked, "What pets have you been keeping?" "A cat." With an absent-minded look, Feidu, who wasn't yet 15 at the time, seemingly casually said, "That busybody policeman gave it to me." Fei Chungyue turned to look at him in great interest. "The little cop knows how to amuse children. Where's the cat?" Let me see it. Fedu looked at him, gave a strange and cold laugh, then spread his hands toward him. There were a few bloody cat hairs on his palms. Here it is. After he'd seen this, Fei Chunye didn't say anything about it, only calmly lectured him, ordering him to buy another cat that was about the same and give it back. If he could get a little closer to the police officer at the suitable time, there would be benefits for the future. Without looking up, Fedu listened indolently, perhaps hearing some of it. At the same time, in front of Fei Chunye's face, he cleverly wove together some of the cat hairs from his palm, soundlessly blowing them towards the man's back when he turned to leave. Having finished inspecting his favorite work, Fei Chunye had left in satisfaction. That had been Feidu's first rebellion, his first deception, his first time knowing that no one on earth was omnipotent, and even a demon could be easily tricked by his own excessive self-confidence. Ooh. Though the kitten from back then had now grown into a very large cat, supposedly of an eccentric disposition, and its shed, Fedu averted the gaze that was making Loyi grow nervous, slowly walking by it, filling its bowl with cat food. Lo and Joe usually got to work at 8:30. If he could get out of bed at 8:10, it was already good. Each morning it was like fighting a battle. But today he opened his eyes before 8, reaching out a hand to feel around. Feeling emptiness, he gave a start, rolled over and got up. He stared blankly at the already cold half of the bed for a good while, then charged out, almost frightened. Owen Joe only relaxed somewhat when he saw Fedu sitting out on the balcony, drinking coffee. The domesticity! Heated up sandwiches and another cup of coffee were laid out on the little table in the dining room. Fedu must have gone down first thing in the morning to buy them. Loiko's bowl was still half full of cat food. The cat, whose loyalty lay with whoever fed it, was crouched on the couch, licking its paws, evidently having eaten and drunk its fill, having no intention of acknowledging it has been litter box owner, attendant, oh my goodness. So early, Lord Joe whispered. Then, frowning, he walked over and snatched away Fedu's coffee. Who told you to drink this? Go to the kitchen and get the milk from the left-hand cabinet. Fedu tapped his watch. You'll be late. Lord Joe didn't deign to wrangle with him, planning to let him see what a tornado of a man was like. But when he'd finished washing up and was thoroughly awake, Lord Joe looked at Fedu's tidy outfit and involuntarily felt alarmed. He bit off half a sandwich at once. In between nearly choking to death, he asked, feigning indifference, "Where are you going today?" When he heard this, Fedu put down the milk, his expression somewhat awkward. Like a student who just input his university entrance exam ID and was waiting to see his results, Lo and Joe's heart went to his throat, having a tragic collision with the breakfast he'd just swallowed. He was afraid that Fedu was going to say, "I thought it over and I'd better take my leave." Fedu said, "You don't have an extra parking spot here, do you?" Lo Windjaw's suspended heart smashed back down into his chest, his budding good mood bursting into full bloom as it fell. He really couldn't cover it up, smiling involuntarily. Looking at his expression, Fedu was very taken aback, thinking, I don't think this clumsy estate would have adequate parking. Sorry, it's so funny because I don't think I've been able to stop smiling since we started reading this volume. So I probably look equally as silly as Lo and Joe right now. Then he heard Lo and Joe joyously tell him, "Huh, you're right, there isn't one. They do. Dot dot dot." What was his problem? Lo and Joe efficiently put back his breakfast and tossed him his keys, not asking where he was going. "For the next few days, drive my car when you go out. Come the weekend, I'll think of a way to get you a spot. One at most. Don't drive your imperial harem over here." Pedro said, "What about you?" Lo and Joe waved at him with great vigor, ran into the basement, and carried out the big bike. Moving like a mad dog, he rode it away with a clatter, giving the bicycle a rocket momentum, dashing towards the city bureau like a flare. I'm just wondering what's going through his mind. Is it kind of like a, well, as long as you have my car, you have to come back to me to, return the car keys in the car. So, that's all I can think. In the end, chapter 93, Verhoevenski? It still doesn't feel right. 3. In the end, the flare wasn't as fast as the four-wheeled products of modern technology. After showing off all morning, Comrade Lo and Joe had the misfortune of being gloriously late. Though in this respect, Lo and Joe was a habitual offender, being 15 or 20 minutes late wasn't enough to make him feel guilty. He swaggered into the office, very calmly accepting everyone's welcoming eyes on him. "Morning, children. Have you eaten?" The welcoming eyes developed a form of expectant soft light, the starving masses looking at him with deep affection. Empty-handed, Lo and Joe laughed aloud, complacently proclaiming, "I've eaten." They thought they had a hero for 2.0 seconds. The tender gazes immediately darkened, turning into hateful arrows, wanting nothing better than to pin Lo and Joe to the ground and step on him 10,000 times. Soon after, however, the dining hall downstairs delivered some steamers of freshly made soup dumplings. Learning that Captain Law had put these on his card, the mood of the masses stabilized once more, and Captain Law once again became everyone's good captain. As she handed out dumplings, Lang Chao asked, "Boss, did you get up late again?" "I didn't," said Lo and Joe in a seemingly very casual tone. "I gave someone my car to drive this morning, so I biked over." Lo and Joe didn't have the bad habit of treating his car like a wife. In this respect, he was rather generous. When he was making visits in civilian clothes and couldn't conveniently drive a service car, he'd often use his private vehicle for public work, and he'd occasionally lend it to his wretchedly poor colleagues to use for going on dates. But the important point in what he'd said wasn't lending the car, it was this morning. A charitable colleague probingly asked, "Who's driving your car so early in the morning, Captain Law? You must have had someone over last night." Lo and Joe smiled in an obvious attempt at cover-up, not saying yes and not saying no, enjoying the special treatment of all rising to applaud. Afterwards, he still had to preen, showing off while pretending to complain. "What are you all making a fuss about? I've drunk a bellyful of northwest wind that I haven't finished digesting yet. Times like this, I think that being single has its good points." "Sir, can you still claim that title at this point?" Hearing this, everyone felt that the dumplings in their mouths had lost their flavour somewhat. While their stomachs were full, they still rather wanted to rise in a rebellion and kill this. I'm not gonna say that word. Lo and Joe harvested their death stares in perfect contentment, turned on his computer, and logged into the City Bureau's mobile officing system. Since the identities of the criminal police officers tailing young Bohr had been leaked, he developed a habit of logging in when he had nothing else to do. But, boss, said Lang Chao. Director Wang from admin said yesterday that the end of the year is coming up and the Bureau is planning to put together a general safety propaganda campaign to hang up in buses and subways. He wanted our team to send a few people, the ones who'll make a better impression. I mean, they would definitely make a good impression, I'm just saying. Tell La Wang that my people are the city's public security authority's foremost troupe of folk dancers, no, of fashion models. Tell him to come over and pick. He can take whoever he likes. We sell our bodies, but not our talents. I think it's supposed to be the other way wrong, Lo Wenjo. Lo Wenjo stretched, then scrolled down the page. Hey, what is this? How did a trifle like some bats running away from home end up in front of me? Oh crap, we're at this case already? That makes sense, but I hadn't put the pieces together. Okay. The mobile officing system's full name was too long, so everyone had picked out a nickname for it, calling it the Card Puncher. The system's design concept was actually very advanced. It was an internal network spanning the whole city, but it hadn't been extended by being made compulsory, and its functions coincided in many places with public security's pre-existing internal networks, creating many redundancies. Therefore, like many activities of no clear purpose that the City Bureau undertook every year, like this propaganda campaign that no one was going to see, for example, it had become an image project. Apart from those needing to think about the little bureaucracy's burden of the card punch. Apart from those needing to think about the little bureaucratic burden of the card puncher when going out into the field, others only swarmed like bees to log in to inquire into their work records when it came time to write the year-end summaries. Lo Wenjo's privileges were fairly high. Apart from being able to inquire about the City Bureau's criminal investigation team's fieldwork statuses, he could also see what each district sub-bureau's criminal investigation department was up to. If the sub-bureaus or the local police stations encountered something relatively complicated and needed to send it up, they'd first do a simple write-up and have the program push it up to the appropriate department head. But the case that had shown up in front of him now was really something of a triviality. A group of middle school students running away together. Just you wait, Lo Wenjo, just you wait. There was a private school in the city that included junior and senior middle school, called Yufeng Middle School. Yufeng Middle School was sealed off, its students all boarding at the school and going home only once a week. But this week, some senior middle year 1 students had hopped the school's walls during the night and run off. One of the students had left a letter for his teachers and parents, explaining the reasons he'd left. It came to nothing more than too much stress, loneliness, that sort of thing. When Lo Wenjo had read this, he was baffled. Listen, are we going to be responsible for tracking down lost golden retrievers next? As a golden retriever owner, I take that personally. This was how Yan City's public security system operated normally. Cases of suicide, accident, missing persons, and so on would be handled by the low-level local police stations as civil police. If, after the civil police got involved, they found that the case was rather complicated and required the cooperation of specialized criminal investigation techniques, they would report it to the criminal investigation team of the sub-bureau whose jurisdiction they were in. Usually, only major cases that crossed jurisdiction or that were particularly ugly would disturb the city bureau. Lang Chao strolled. I'm sorry, Lang. Yeah, Lang Chao strolled into his office and looked over. Oh, that! I know about that. First, it crossed the jurisdictions, and I heard they asked the internet police to assist. It's not something a local police station or two can resolve. There are rather a lot of departments cooperating on it, so maybe when they were sending it out, they accidentally ticked off the city bureau too. Taran asked in surprise, why do they need the internet police to find missing persons? Did the crowd of brats run away to an internet cafe? Not impossible. No, it's because the letter that kid who led them left behind has become popular online. Lang Chao opened her social media on her phone and showed it to them. A lot of people reposted it. Kids these days can't leave the internet for a moment. If they see this somewhere, they might not be able to resist replying out of vanity, so we'll be able to fix their location. When Joe swept his eyes of it, it's been 3 days already. They haven't been found yet? Teenagers running away from home wasn't the same as small children going missing, and the students who had gone missing were in senior middle school, 14 or 15 years, both male and female. Because they'd left on their own, the probability that they would run into danger wasn't high. And then they were still young, so they would be relatively easy to find. Ordinarily, they'd be snatched up very quickly. Of course, it was even more common for the brats to obediently come running home when their money ran out before anyone could find them. It was really rather unusual for them to not have been found after 3 days. Who knows where they've gone? Lang Chao, Lang Chao shrugged. When I was their age, I was too busy dating to make that kind of mischief and upset my teachers and parents. Right, and you definitely didn't have time to study either. Lowenjo rolled his eyes, interrupting her. The mind of a 3-year-old, and you've still made some progress. Stop playing humble. Get ready for the meeting. Since the city bureau was having some idle days following the inhumane workload of the last half year, Lo and Joe indolently hosted a plenary? I want to say plenary, but I don't think that's what it is. Session on playing games. No, on ideological education. The main contents of the meeting were Deputy Captain Tao reading out soporific study materials in a flat voice, while their middle-aged and elderly colleagues whispered in each other's ears, complaining that the children couldn't study properly, and the youngsters, with Captain Luo himself leading the charge, teamed up to defeat a boss. It would be better if every day could be like this. All of Yan City wrapped up in a cold and snow, everyone yawning as they went to work and school. The public security system hibernating in a quiet conference room, the big case at hand a matter of some senior middle school students running away. The boss in the cell phone game was knocked out. Lo and Joe winked at everyone around him, exchanging high fives under the table. At the same time, he couldn't help letting his mind wander, thinking, what did Fei do when he was at school? And what did Fei do when he was at school? My bad. His mother had just died, and he'd had that dubious father, a 15-year-old child, unwilling to say a single superfluous sentence to anyone, so loaded down by worries that a hoisting jack couldn't have lifted them. Had he heard his teacher's lessons? Had he been like other children, worrying about what university he would test into? Could he have had the leisure to lose himself in an early romance? Boss, we're doing another round. Hurry up and join in. Lo and Joe pulled himself together and once again picked up his overheated phone, feeling that perhaps Feidu was poisonous, slipping into his mind to harass him at every opportunity. It really was irritating. I mean, if we're talking that kind of poisonous, I would say it's a pretty harmless kind. But maybe that's just me. Feidu, more wronged than Doi, currently had no knowledge of his crime. He was driving familiarly towards Yan Security Uni. There were 3 knocks on the door of Pan Yuteng's office. He looked up and called, "Come in." When the City Bureau had restarted the picture album project, Dr. Bai's husband, Pan Yuteng, had been the person in charge of it at the Yan Security Uni end, and he was also Feidu's temporary academic advisor. Before school had started, Feidu's original determined Oh, sorry. Before school had started, Feidu's originally determined upon advisor had received a rare opportunity, so he'd gone through his school contacts and settled Feidu on Pan Yutang, letting him, by chance coincidence, start in on the picture album project. Feidu? Pan Yutang stared when he saw him. "Are you out of the hospital? Sit down." While Feidu had been in the hospital, Pan Yutang and Dr. Bai had of course gone to visit him. He still clearly looked unwell. His cheeks were pale, and he was more heavily dressed than usual. On going downstairs, he'd had a taste of Yancey's bitter winter, and sitting in the car with the heating blowing on him the whole way hadn't warmed him up. His hands were still stiff. He said thank you and accepted a hot drink from Pan Yutang. He held it in his hands for a while, and his reddened fingers finally returned to life somewhat. "I don't need any follow-up treatment. There's no point in staying at the hospital. Anyway, it was uncomfortable there. I'd rather go home and recover," said Feidu. "Also, I was worried that if I stayed any longer, the whole semester would have passed. What would I do if you made me repeat a year?" "Let's be serious with each other." Pan Yutang didn't respond to his joke, gravely saying, "I can understand a criminal policeman on the front lines sometimes encountering danger, but this is my first time hearing of a student who's gone over to examine some documents getting involved in this kind of thing." "Just coincidence. The city bureau didn't have enough service cars and I lent them mine." Feidu leaned back easily in his chair. "I've heard that the examination Captain Law wrote on my account could have been assembled for a publication, so it must be clear enough. Teacher, have you read the homework I handed in?" Pan Yutang glared at him, then opened the paper he'd handed in on his computer. There was a TV in his office. Teacher Pan was devoted to his studies and of a serious disposition. Even when he occasionally relaxed, what he watched was the legal channel. Since Feidu had come in, the TV had been broadcasting rural police stories, describing a woman who had died by the side of the road after leaving her home. There had been skid marks next to her, and the local police had quickly found the responsible car. The responsible driver had admitted that he'd been driving drunk in the middle of the night and had run over the victim. But the victim's body hadn't shown any signs of having died from being struck. There seemed to be some other hidden circumstances behind her death. Presumably because he minded the noise, Pan Yutang turned off the TV. Feidu turned in the swivel chair. It must be very easy for the medical examiners to distinguish whether a person died of being hit by a car or was run over after they were already dead. What's the point of that kind of plot? If you'd carefully read those files you arranged before, you'd have found that in fact the majority of criminals don't have sufficient common sense or intelligence. Pan Yutang reviewed Feidu's paper at a glance. Without looking up, he said, "Some kill entirely in the heat of the moment, and some are very stupid. Murderers will even believe wild rumors and attempt to mislead modern criminal investigation techniques. Truly difficult to trace criminals are very rare. Yes, communal trends. You've used the word trends very delicately here. Why did you want to write about the subject? Because you're right. Aside from in a few rather remote regions, it's very difficult to avoid modern criminal investigation techniques, and it's often even more challenging for a person's psychological endurance. But communal crimes are another thing. Sometimes members may not think they're participating in criminal activities at all. That actually sounds very true. The more the more sealed off the surroundings, the easier it is to create an abnormal group. Prisons, for example, or human trafficking in remote mountainous regions, and so on. Of course, the same possibility exists in a developed region, but the cost will be comparatively high. Pan Nutang looked at him. Feidu's scarf was still around his neck, half hiding his smile. He explained why he'd come. Teacher, these three recent major cases have all been communal matters. Can we make it a special topic in the picture album? Pan Yutang's eyebrows rose up very high. If he hadn't chosen this contact person himself, Pan Yutang almost would have suspected that Feidu had other intentions. That's how he gets you. Feidu quietly explained, I don't like leaving things unfinished. I'll consider it. Pan Yutang waved a hand at him. Feidu didn't pester him. He nodded, stood, and bid him farewell. At the same time, he wasn't very concerned about Pan Yutang not agreeing. If he really didn't, he could also make the current contact person withdraw due to some unforeseen event. He hoped that his luck would be good and his paper would convince Pan Yutang. Having to use unconventional methods would be a burden on an injured person. Okay, so we're about 40 pages in. I'm trying to decide if I should try and go for another hour, but I know my voice is maybe not sounding the best right now. Because I'm definitely a little bit out of practice here. Let's just see. Okay, I think maybe I should leave it here for tonight. But yeah, we'll be back at the very latest on next Tuesday for the next read along. But I'm hoping maybe I can do Saturday. I'll see how it goes. I have a Dawn's assessment that's coming up that's gonna be taking a lot of the time, so it's kind of depending on how preparations for that goes, but otherwise I'll definitely see you guys again next Tuesday, and I'm just so excited to be back. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and yeah, have a lovely rest of your week. 再见。